and to hear this very interesting question. I hope that you've been satisfied. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was lovely. Thank you. Okay, so our final speaker this evening is Mario Coffa. So Mario is an Archives and Libraries Cooperative Librarian and Archivist and works for the libraries at the University of Perugia. His tasks are varied and range from front office services to the teaching of various subjects such as digital libraries, social media, web creation and professional training. As a graduate in paleography and archival studies from the prestigious School of the Vatican Secret Archives, he is working on the reorganisation of the Battaccini Fund for the University of Perugia and is in charge of the management and conservation of the historic archive of the municipality of Gubbio in the region of Umbria. From 2014 to 2017, he has been a member of the CER, the Regional Executive Committee of CAeB Umbria, Italian Library Association section of the region of Umbria, and was responsible for digital libraries and training. From 2017 to 2020, he has been elected the Regional President of CAeB Umbria, and since 2020 he has been a member of the CAeB National Training Observatory. He is the founder of the Library World Tour project in collaboration with CAeB Umbria and Insula Europea, and he has participated in various conferences, has published numerous articles, and is co-author of the volume Teachers and Librarians on the Path of Lifelong Learning. He is extremely busy, and in his presentation, he will examine the consequences that the COVID-19 pandemic has had on libraries in Italy from the point of view of both the provision of services and the use of facilities. He will also report on how digital services have contributed to integrate and at times to compensate for the various limitations within the Italian library context, which is often variable and not always adequate, not only in terms of physical spaces, structures and tools, but also regarding professional recognition. So over to you, Mario. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Carol, and I apologize right away for my English. Okay. Good afternoon to you all. In the first place, I would like to thank you for inviting me to present my paper to you today, and to greet all those of you who are connected remotely, even though we cannot meet in person and get to know each other face-to-face physically. I hope that we will be able to do this in the not too distant future. And first of all, I wanted to start by explaining the choice of my title for my paper, which is This Strange New Library. The events which have occurred over the last 2 years has profoundly affected our lives, dramatically changed our day-to-day routines and habits, and most of all has altered our working patterns at every level, in particular those of librarians. From school to university, passing through libraries, the COVID-19 crisis was unprecedented and unpredictable. We have all, or nearly all of us, been caught unprepared in the face of the pandemic. And we have all had to devise and discover new strategies and working patterns to ensure our own personal well-being. The pandemic has been an event that will leave its mark on our present time, and that our children will read about it in future history books. And perhaps some of you might think I am a little crazy in saying this, but I think we have had the good fortune, or perhaps even better, a great and perhaps unique opportunity, that of experiencing a period of transformation and revolution of epochal proportions. Of course, everything has developed out of necessity, and as we all know, necessity is the mother of invention. It is precisely at these times that each of us can adapt and make a contribution to the whole, each with our most particular energies and forces. However, let us examine the relevant facts. Before COVID, we were already living in a phase of transition, or rather, the metabolization of digital resources and all the services that accompanied them. We were endeavoring to introduce and implement a new system of working in our lives, together with a new concept of life and the services we offer, and at the same time, we were striving to adopt and assimilate these new forms. However, not all realities were the same, and not all of us were equally equipped and able to implement or accept these new models and working patterns. The COVID pandemic has accelerated this process of metabolization out of necessity, as it was essential to continue studying, working, and to provide essential services using the only tools we had available to us, namely technological and digital tools. Just to give an example, remaining in the field of libraries and reading in Italy, the use of digital library platforms and e-books increased by 14% in 2020 and by as much as 31% in 2021. Users of streaming services and podcasts have also increased. We have rediscovered that we can arrange a meeting or a conference remotely, sometimes covering considerable geographical distances, which compensate for the impossibility of being able to meet others in person. Even when, in the future, we will eventually have the opportunity to be all together in a single conference room, we will still have the possibility of being able to involve those who cannot physically be with us. In the case of libraries, we can finally reach those users we were initially looking for and who had not disappeared, but who had simply moved to other places, such a social network, for example. This especially concerns young people. We can finally offer a much more satisfactory service for the needs and the requirements of our reference communities. In Italy, libraries have adapted to the pandemic with various consequences and albeit with many difficulties. Libraries in Italy began closing to the public at the end of February 2020. Since mid-March 2020, most of the country's librarians have not had access to their offices. In a relatively short period of time, a revolution in the offer of library services began. With them, schools and kindergartens were also closed, forcing many children of school and preschool age to stay at home and deprived of face-to-face teaching. Their difficulty, along with that of many parents, was enormous, and not just for them. At the same time, library users found themselves unable to physically enter the facilities in the evenings or overnight. In my personal experience as a librarian at a university library, I was able to see the difficulties faced by young university students, not being able to access teaching materials, to take an exam, or to write their degree thesis. What did the librarians do? We found ourselves working twice as much as before. Although the display that monitored the attendance inside the library reached the number 0. Through email requests, we have tried to deal with and answer hundreds of requests. Regarding copyright, we digitized the material that was requested, activated access to database, where it was possible to retrieve study material on open access, activated and explained the various virtual private network services to allow access to the electronic resources of the library via a remote subscription. We activated digital libraries for lending or online consultation of books, such as Media Library Online, a large digital lending platform available to Italian libraries, magazines, and other educational and non-educational material. All with a great effort on the part of librarians. From the user's point of view, it was difficult to access the rooms or shelves to search by subject. In the field of public libraries, an even greater effort, I dare say enormous effort, has been made to guarantee services. An example in Italy could be the San Giorgio Library in Pistoia, which collaborated with authors, asking them to film themselves while they read their works. The videos were then posted on the library's Facebook account for the benefit of unbound users. However, small public libraries, for example, civic libraries in small towns and hamlets, here the situation was much worse than in the first example. In many cases, the precariousness given by the absence of technological tools, even before the start of the pandemic, such as computers, internet stations, and electronic resources, has only accentuated the emergency. We discovered ones which have never healed that become more evident during the lockdown period. From a report published by the Institute of Information Science and Technologies of Pisa, and in collaboration with the Italian Library Association, it emerged that in many small communities, for example, it has been made possible to guarantee the loan of books by resorting to the aid of civil protection for deliveries or that of the municipal pharmacies as a collection point. Furthermore, in many cases, the total closure of some libraries did not even allow the creation of comparative data concerning services before and after the pandemic. What about youngsters and the younger children? Libraries dedicated to children and the young people have also been forced to close, but despite this, they have played a fundamental role, and remote modalities have become fundamental to continue to maintain a lively relationship with the communities. In libraries dedicated to children, as well as in those aimed at adults, after an initial moment of inevitable loss, the methods of providing some services have especially changed. Loan, consultation, reading education, information literacy, teacher training. When the condition for face-to-face activities no longer exists, libraries have reported digital initiatives and resources to continue the practice of reading. Numerous activities have been created and promoted to keep young readers and their families company, and where libraries for children are present. New initiatives dedicated to children have been sprouted where the protagonist is always the book, declined in different and widespread forms on different media. The local project group linked to Born to Read, thanks to the collaboration between the Italian Library Association, the Italian Publishers Association, and the rights holders, have made several video readings freely available online, drawing on a list of agreed titles. The year of the pandemic coincided with an important anniversary to be celebrated, and for which all the children's libraries had prepared themselves. The centenary anniversary of the birth of Gianni Rodari. This event allowed to show how important his texts are for the growth of children and how much its contents are freely accessible to all. However, the application of all these alternative services has made it possible to assist the users to solve their own needs and the librarians to fulfill requests. Many libraries have found that social media or messaging services, such as WhatsApp and Telegram, can be fundamental channels for the provision of front office services. Many libraries found that social media was the most effective way to reach users. Many libraries did this before, while others have enhanced this service during lockdown. I believe that libraries have therefore shown a good level of adaptability and flexibility in the face of change despite so many difficulties. I assure you that this effort would not have happened if it had not been necessary. This is the good fortune I was talking about earlier. We created the opportunity to do so. For the past month, libraries have slowly reopened and face-to-face services have started to work again, albeit partially. But what did our young users find before their eyes when they entered precisely a strange new library? Thermoscanners, green pass validation tools, mandatory routes, and a room that were not yet accessible. But now, many of them can, with their computers and tablets, access electronic resources better than before. Many of them know how to use OPAC better than 2 years ago. Many of them use applications to scan documents directly from their own personal devices. All this is nothing more than a digital literacy process that we have been hoping for a long time. I would like to present 2 testimonials from frequent library users who, through their voices, can tell us about their experience during this period of crisis. They come from 2 different points of view: the young university student and the teachers. Okay, can you start my video, please?
The pandemic has affected all aspects of our daily life in an appalling way. So since the beginning of this rough experience, we had no clue what was going to happen, let alone in a day, a week, a month. As a consequence, we all felt a strong feeling of restlessness. When curfews restrictions started to reduce, as a teacher, I tried to reorganize my working and self-learning routine. As a result, I made up my mind to go to the central library of my town during the last summer. I was aware that I would find a different atmosphere there, along with all the disadvantages connected to the COVID. Firstly, at the entrance of the building, I immediately noticed the first hint commonly brought about the pandemic. It was a signal alerting to the mask wearing and the skin temperature requirements. Obviously, I had worn a mask already on my way to the library, and as soon as I arrived there, an attendant stopped me to check my skin temperature by using an electronic device which scanned my forehead as well. It seems to me like being in a film set in the future, but it was my present in real life instead. In fact, once in the studying room, I saw people not sit next to each other at the desks, but distanced by an empty place. Also, every seat was protected by some plexiglass panels, which gave me a sense of being a fishbowl. So distancing and panels reminded me the social loneliness I had already experienced when I was forced to stay at home, but in a different way. I was in a public and social space, but I felt lonely at the same time. There was a weird atmosphere imbued of mistrust, so vivid in the people's faces, revealing worries maybe of a supposed COVID carrier that could be among us. The compulsive use of hand disinfectants, which everyone had in their bag and that you could easily find all over the room, the masks stitched on their faces, the open wide windows despite the hot summer weather. All the details I mentioned affected my library experience that was completely different before the COVID. So this public space was not a social hub anymore, where you could come across new acquaintances. For example, people sharing the same passion for studying. On the other hand, the only advantage of all this situation has been the thorough cleanliness of all the rooms in general. In the end, I do hope that all mental and material barriers will fade away so that we will keep on living our lives without fear and distress.
It's necessary to make a distinction between the first and the second wave of the pandemic. During the first wave, the university libraries that I attended offered many services. For example, you could borrow books or read articles and essays, generally in PDF format, from home. Conversely, public libraries closed down, forcing students to buy books on the internet or at bookshops if they wanted to continue their studies. The second wave balanced out many things. The distance between university libraries and public libraries was reduced. Professors and students who were writing their thesis could enter university libraries and read the bibliographic material on their own. I can say that this was a positive experience for me. I used to attend the library every day. I knew their spaces very well and I was able to find books on my own. I must admit that having to ask the library staff every time was frustrating. In addition to that, I was a student representative for the library for 2 years. The advantage of the reopening have been scarce. Perhaps they have only consisted in the possibility of finding the articles or the parts of a book which one needs. However, I find it absurd that a person was booked to go to the library, and I also don't understand the reduction of the opening hours.
Okay, thank you. So from these testimonies, we have summarized directly from the user's voices what happened and how much work is required of the librarian, and how much more will be required in the future in the light of what has happened. I believe that it will be necessary to continue on this path, to continue to acquire new skills through our training and to try to open up more avenues for access to information. I also believe that it is essential to encourage the professional growth of librarians through continuous training so that, in turn, they can guarantee the right training of users and further ascertain their role as educators and gateways to culture and information. We must demonstrate the value of our profession and allow it to be recognized. All this is achieved by striving and by explaining what librarians do or can do, but also by implementing practical actions within our libraries before even writing their instruction or manuals. We are very good at this, but we must also adopt suitable measures for each person so that everyone can find the answer to their needs and the requirements once they enter a library. Libraries must belong to everyone. Now we must act. From the experience of my International Library World Tour project, I have learned that in countries where the librarian is proud of his work and this work is recognized as important, there is a great deal of practical commitment behind it, which goes beyond our desk and our manuals. There is listening to our communities and the desire to focus not only on books, but also on the people. We would like to enter this strange new library. Okay, thank you for your attention. Thank you, Carol. Sorry again for my English.
No, yeah, please don't apologize, Mario. Your English is absolutely fantastic. And I can't even speak Italian, so, you know, so please don't apologize. It was really good. Thank you so much. I think what came through in your presentation was the positivity. And I think, you know, I really felt that when I was delivering my library services as a head of service, that despite the awful times we were living in, that there were some real positives, and that increase in digital inclusion, and particularly among young people, but also among you know, people from all ages, that actually when you have to do something, and I include myself in that, you do learn, and you know, I feel that I could never have done this before, and I'm sure a lot of people on this webinar are feeling the same thing. So I think it was really, really interesting to hear from your library's point of view how that is seen as a positive. One of the things you did mention, and I'd like to kind of ask a bit more about, is, well, particularly in the films, that the testimonial, particularly from the teacher, came through about, and I had this as well, how people felt that it wasn't the space, that kind of space, safe space that they knew and recognised as a social hub, somewhere to meet people because of the restrictions. And I just wonder how your staff felt about that, because my staff, you know, were concerned that it was a barrier to use.
Yes, I have need of Mariella.
Yes,
for translator. Sorry, yeah. Thank you.
Probably spoke too quick.
Thank you. Sorry.
My husband that was going to translate. Can you hear us?
Can you hear?
Yes, we can. Yes.
All right. Okay.
Thanks very much for the question.
If you say, okay.
Right. La domanda è, dal punto di vista del personale, del testimone della docente, la prima testimone, la docente, volevo sapere se il personale avesse questi problemi in sicurezza, insomma, in questo ambiente nuovo. Il personale della biblioteca, si capisce.
Sì, ovviamente il personale della docente, insomma i docenti insieme agli studenti hanno avuto le stesse problematiche, perché le limitazioni e le restrizioni che sono state adottate in biblioteca sono state valide ovviamente per tutti. Cambiavano solo le esigenze, nel senso che il personale docente aveva comunque in qualche modo la possibilità sia a casa sia nei loro studi di poter ovviare al lavoro grazie a strumenti e a materiali didattici di cui erano già in possesso. Per gli studenti era diverso, perché avevano necessariamente bisogno di accedere in biblioteca, perché molto del materiale che dovevano utilizzare, cioè i libri, stavano dentro la biblioteca.
Va bene, va bene. Right, Mario tells us that there were in fact two tiers operating. The staff, the academic staff, particularly the university lecturers, were in a more privileged position. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Yes, thank you.
We're in a more privileged position because they were able to resort to the comfort and comparative isolation of their own desks and studies on campus. Unfortunately, this was not possible for obvious reasons for students. They had to go in with the hoi polloi, as it were, and had to rub shoulders with their contemporaries. And unfortunately, if they needed to consult books, they actually had to come on campus and go into the library to consult these books, which made the whole thing more precarious. So in fact, to answer your question, the academic staff, and I include the library staff in that, were rather more privileged and more protected overall.
Thank you. Thank you, Mario. Thank you for the translation as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've got one more question. I think I might have picked up from your presentation that you delivered books out into communities. Is that right? And can you tell us a bit more about how that happened?
Vorrebbe sapere, la domanda è che se avete distribuito libri nell'interland della comunità.
E come è successo?
E come è successo? È vero questo? E come è successo? Se questo fosse la verità.
Allora, sì, sono state adottate soluzioni differenti. Per esempio, nel mio caso di biblioteca universitaria sono state adottate tutte le misure di cui parlavo prima, quindi tutte le varie modalità a distanza, di scansioni, invio addirittura di fotocopie. Ma la cosa più interessante riguardava per esempio le biblioteche per ragazzi. Nel caso nostro, per esempio qui a Perugia, avevamo già attivo un bibliobus, una specie di roulotte praticamente che veniva utilizzata per il prestito intercultura, no? Durante il lockdown questo autobus è stato utilizzato per portare a casa i libri a chi li chiedeva. Veniva fatta dalle famiglie una richiesta via email e venivano consegnati direttamente davanti alla porta, venivano richiesti dei titoli precisi e venivano portati alle famiglie. Questo grazie anche alla collaborazione del comitato genitori, molte scuole che hanno aiutato appunto le biblioteche e i bibliotecari in questo. Venivano mandate le richieste e poi tramite questo pulmino venivano consegnate direttamente a casa i libri. Questo è l'esempio più vicino a me a Perugia, ma ce ne sono stati tanti altri anche nel resto d'Italia.
Grazie.
Grazie.
To answer your question, yes, there were different techniques were adopted by various sectors of the library. In particular, those responsible for running books for children and children's libraries, they participated in a scheme which actually distributed books directly to a children's door-to-door service via requests made to librarians via email, and they were delivered to directly to the houses of these children, or even photocopies of these books, by the so-called bibliobus, literally a book bus, which was able to bring these books directly to the children, which was a service very much appreciated in the more outlying and remote parts of villages. Some villages could only consist of a few houses, which is why we refer to them as hamlets. Parents were very helpful indeed, apparently it must be said, in bringing the whole technique, the whole system to fruition by encouraging their children and the teachers, of course, and the librarians, c'est la façon dire, as the French would say, by writing these requests and helping the children send emails to request these books from these libraries. And on the whole, it was a very useful and much appreciated service.
Oh, thank you so much. That sounds really valuable, and yes, a really well worth venture, and I'm sure that all the users really appreciated that. We don't have any more questions, but thank you so much for a wonderful presentation, Mario, and thank you to all three of you, to Julia and to Jan and to Mario. It's been really fascinating. I'm just going to hand over now to John, who is going to just come in and finish off for us. Thank you so much, everybody.
Well, thank you, Carol.
Welcome.
A fantastic presentation from all our speakers today. I'd like to, on behalf of the EUROLIS organising group, thank all our speakers today very much for putting the fascinating different detail from different countries, which is what we were trying to understand and share with each other about what's happening in Europe. I'd also like to add my thanks to Gosha Kapaj and Ho at the Goethe-Institut for hosting this seminar, because it takes a lot of technical preparation and care. So thanks to you. And also to Dennis Rady, who we heard there helping with a truly international feel of having the Italian language translated. Thanks, Dennis.
Very well.
Okay. And of course to Carol, because you've chaired this as you did last week beautifully, and we are very grateful for your time. We know you're a very busy person. For everybody else out there, thank you for attending, and do come to our next session on the 17th of November virtually. If you cannot, or you cannot encourage others, to come, you should be able to pick up the presentations, as I said at the beginning, on our WordPress site. And once all the 3 sessions have been completed, in time we hope to share at least part, if not all, of the recording of this seminar. This is all done with the collaborative work of a group of librarians in EUROLIS, and from the 7 countries involved at the moment. And I'd like to thank each of those for their participation, because it takes all of their work to garner speakers from each country and bring us all together. Our other big job is the Euro Toolbox, which, if you don't know about, you can access details on the EUROLIS WordPress site, eurolis.wordpress.com, and that's a free resource to any library in the UK. So I think just to say, do come. Next week we've got some really good speakers, 3 speakers in 2 sessions. We've got Anna Cabret, who's the Director of Innovation and Communication at Barcelona Libraries. And she's going to be talking about how they identified the priorities of service and maintaining that service during the lockdowns, and how it's sort of their progressive reopening of those services happened as well. And then from Portugal, we have 2 speakers. We have Ana Margarida Ramos from the University of Aveiro, or is it Aveiro? Apologies. Anna is the full professor of Department of Languages and Cultures, and she's joined by Ine Villa from the Library Service of Porto and the Public Library Service. And they'll be talking about the different activities and services provided in Portuguese libraries throughout the country, how they maintain the reading habit amongst children, and how they activated new ways of provision. So that there are going to be 2 great sessions. And then finally a plenary session, which Carol will chair, and invite all of you, to voice more questions, or even share your experiences, which other people can benefit from, in that last session. So do join us. And if I may just hand back to Carol, thank you, Carol, once again. And if you'd like to sign our session off.
Yeah, thank you, John. Yes, thank you. And as John said, I'm really looking forward to next week. I hope that you can all join us, and we'll have a little session where we can hear a bit more from you as well. So that will be really interesting. So I think we've run really just to time. So that's perfect. Thank you, everybody. Thank you all the speakers for doing that, and thank you for all your input, your questions, and your comments in the chat. And hopefully see some of you next week. Thank you. So bye-bye, everybody. Thanks.
Bye, Carol.